Assalamu all of you. Today we are going to start with a new topic that is regarding the hardwares. Now, if we come over the hardware, so hardware topic is actually divided into three categories. Now, what are those three categories? It is regarding the first one is regarding the memory and data storage. The other one is regarding the computer architecture. And the last part is regarding the input and output devices, or you may say input output devices. So these are the three parts in this topic, or you may say these are the three phases in this topic that we actually need to cover. Now we will be starting in the first session that is regarding with the memory and data storage. So first of all, I'm going to define you that what is a data storage. So as you can see that it's mentioned over here that if you are going to sort out or if you are going to store any sort of the data or information, now just have a look on the data and information. Data is actually, what is the data? It is raw facts and figures. Raw facts and figures. Whereas when it comes to the information, so it is processed form of data. Now just suppose that if I'm going to ask you that how many students are there in the class, you might say, sir, there are 10 students in the class. Now this 10 is actually termed as a data. Now if I'm going to ask you, please just bifurcate them and just let me know that how many boys are there in the class and how many girls are there. Now you might be doing it on the basis of the name or on the basis of the gender or something like that. Okay, so you will be telling me, for an example, you will be telling me, so there are 6 boys in the class and there are 4 girls in the class. So now if you have just taken out or you have processed that particular number, that is 10 over here. So if you're going to process this stuff, so that is known as an information. So over here, when it comes with the definition of a data storage, so if you're going to store any sort of the data or information for your later use, that you might be utilizing that after a day or 2 days or might be after an year, so that is known as a data storage. Now memory, or you may say when you're going to store that particular data, so it may be known as the memory as well, because like you are storing any sort of the data in your mind as well. So you say, sir, I do have a sharp memory, or sir, my memory, there are a lot of stuff in my memory. So memory is referred to as an internal storage of that particular device of a system. Okay, now these devices, or you may say these storage or these memory, are basically categorized into 4 categories. Now what are those four categories? Number one, it's the primary, then we do have the secondary, then we do have the tertiary or online, and the last one is the offline offline storage. Sorry. Now coming towards the primary. So primary is something without which your system cannot operate at all. It won't be doing anything. Like for an example, God forbids, if you are not having your brain, there is no brain, or you may say you are not having your lungs or your heart. So without these organs in your body, you cannot operate, you can't live. Similarly, primary memory is something without which your system cannot operate. It cannot operate even a single step. Okay, so now when it comes to the primary storage devices or the primary memory devices, so they include with the RAM, ROMs, I do have mentioned over here, RAM, ROM, registers, cache. These are the primary storage devices. We'll be learning by each of them one by one. Then it comes to the secondary storage device. Now when it comes to secondary storage devices, so secondary storage devices are actually those type of the storage devices without which your system can operate, but not with the 100% efficiency. Like for an example, I may say, God forbids, there is a person who is not having a limb, or you may say he or she is not having a hand. So yeah, he may operate at that particular moment, yeah, but without 100% efficiency. So when it comes to secondary storage devices, so they include two stuffs, that's a hard disk drive and a solid state drive. Then comes the tertiary or an online storage. So tertiary or online storage means that you are storing any sort of the data on the cloud, or you may say with the help of the internet on an internet service, you are storing any sort of the stuff. Then it comes to the offline storage. Now when it comes to the offline storage, so offline storage is something that an optical drive over which you are storing a large amount of the data, yeah, but usually as a backup. So offline storages are actually utilized to store the data as a backup system. Now coming towards the primary storage. So as we just discussed that it's a type of the memory without which your system cannot operate, and we discussed that there are few of the things, like for example RAM is there, ROM is there, register is there, and a cache is there. So we will be learning about each of them one by one. Coming towards the RAM. Now when it comes to the RAM, so first of all you might have seen a RAM. It looks somewhat like this. Yeah, I think so, that's fine. Okay, and there are small chips in here. So they are usually DDR3, DDR4. It's a scale sort of a thing. So that is actually known as a RAM. You might see it on the motherboard as well. If you're going to open up your system, so there is a motherboard. Over the motherboard there is a RAM placed over there. So now when it comes to the RAM, so RAM stands for random access memory, and it's a volatile in nature. Now what do you mean with the volatile? Volatile means that it is temporary in nature. Whatever you're going to store or whatever the instructions are over there in the RAM, as soon as you are going to shut down the power of a system, anything that is present within the RAM will be vanished, will be turned off, or you may say will be just buzz off from there. Okay, now that's the reason that RAM holds the instructions that are currently being processed. Why I have emphasized on this sentence a lot? Because mostly the examiner asks us that what is the usage of a RAM. So the usage of the RAM is something that it is actually utilized to check it out or to store the instructions that are currently being processed, or you may say the parts of the instructions that are currently being processed. Now when it comes to the RAM, so RAM is categorized into three categories: SRAM, DRAM, and the third one is the SDRAM. SRAM, DRAM, and the SDRAM. Static RAM, dynamic RAM, and static dynamic RAM, known as the hybrid RAM as well. Now when it comes to the static RAM, so it is a type of RAM that needs to get refreshed after, oh sorry, that does not need to I'm sorry, I just mixed with the static and the dynamic. So static is something that it's a type of the RAM that does not need to be refreshed after equal set of the time intervals. For an example, I do say I'm giving two students a task, and the task is overall of 10 seconds. Now there is a student A and there is a student B. So student A says, sir, I will be completing this task within 10 seconds. And student B says, sir, after every 2 seconds, I will be taking a gap of around 1 second. So I need to get refresh. So he will be doing this similar task within 14 seconds. How 14? After 2, it will be break into 5 parts: 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. So 1 second over here additional, 1 over here additional, 1 over here additional, and 1 over here additional. So overall it will be making 14 seconds. Okay, so okay, now which one is faster, the A or B? So obviously A is faster because it is using a static RAM, whereas B is using a dynamic RAM that needs to be refreshed after equal time intervals. So SRAM is faster, DRAM is slower. Yeah, but when it comes to the longevity, now what do you mean with longevity? Longevity is something it's sometimes called the longevity as well. So longevity is something that the life of a particular device or a particular stuff. So when it comes to the longevity of SRAM or DRAM, so DRAM is having more longevity Just the reason is that it is getting refreshed after the set time intervals, as compared to the SRAM, it's not going to get refreshed after the set time intervals. Whereas when it comes to the static dynamic RAM, so it is actually a hybrid RAM because it contains the feature for both SRAM and DRAM, and this is the type of the RAM that we are normally utilizing in our systems. We are utilizing SDRAM because some few of the times we do require a static RAM if we are going to process a small amount of the data, like for example a text file or a number file format. So we will be utilizing the static features over there. But if we are playing a game or we are doing something with the you may say we are making the graphics or we are rendering a video, so at that particular moments we will be requiring a dynamic RAM over there, so that it may take a bit longer, but it should give us the proper data or a proper format of the data. So that's the reason we do utilize a dynamic RAM at that place. Now if we come with the differences between the SRAM and the DRAM, so DRAM is consisting of the transistors and the capacitors. There are the transistors and the capacitors placed over there. They are less expensive than SRAM because they are slower. They need to be refreshed, as we just discussed. Higher memory capacity. Why? Because they are refreshing them again and again. So that's the reason they can have a multiple, or you may say more memory capacity as compared to the SRAM. Whereas when it comes to the SRAM, so they are using the flip-flops to hold each bit of the memory. Now what do you mean by the flip-flops? Flip-flops is something, if you are getting the similar data, so flip-flop will convert, or you may say shift one of the bit, so that there should be no you may say there should be no blockage of the data, or the system should not go into the halt position. So at those places we are utilizing the flip-flop. So SRAM is utilizing a flip-flop. Faster data access, it does not need to be refreshed, as we just discussed. And finally, CPU memory cache makes use of the SRAM. Now cache is just the nearest, or you may say just the closest memory storage capacity that is towards the microprocessor. So the part of the file that is currently being processed is in the RAM. Yeah, but few of those files that are required continuously on the consecutive basis, so they are placed within the cache. So that was all for the RAM. In the next session we will be discussing about the ROMs, and yeah, we will be discussing about the registers. Thank you so much.